Story 1. They'll just do what we've all done in the United Kingdom. Use a virtual private network. Story 2. All forms of social media should be banned for people under 16 years of age. Story 3. If I ran a subreddit, I would require all members to be over 18. There are too many predators today. Story 4. It is perfectly sensible to ban people under 16 from here, but the next question is, how do you feel about having to prove your age to Reddit? You would probably have to provide identification, since other methods do not work. Are you happy to have all your Reddit accounts associated with your driver's license? Story 5. It will not do anything. People will do what they want. Making something against the law does not make it magically disappear. Story 6. My thoughts. Well, the Australian government can kiss my ass if they think I am going to provide any personal information to use social media. Story 7. No social media for children under 16 is healthy. Requiring age verification is unhealthy. In my opinion, the latter is more important. Story 8. I understand the intent, but children and teenagers will find a way around anything. Educate them on proper use, and parents must take responsibility. Story 9. Good. Social media is poison, especially for children's brains. It should be banned for all children. Story 10. I am sure children will find a workaround if they want to. Story 11. Reddit should be banned for anyone under 90. Only someone out of touch would enjoy this site. Story 12. There should be a law that is not enforced, simply to alert parents to be concerned and to prevent it. Parents should pressure Reddit to delete users who evade bans when they are reported. Do the same for other issues. No need to show identification. Story 13. I have mixed opinions. On the one hand, I worry. If my little nephew had access to social media, all it takes is one incel red pill post for him to go down a rabbit hole. Add the overall toxicity and harshness of many users, plus easy access to political content that children adopt from whoever sounds cooler or from influencers. Not to mention the easy access to gore and extreme pornographic imagery. I do not just mean Rule 34, but also more borderline illegal sites. On the other hand, access to these spaces has allowed vulnerable teens in abusive households to find comfort and support on the internet and to discover fandoms and interests. For example, it was through the internet and games that I developed a love of space and history and a better understanding of emotional maturity. Just as the internet can expose kids to bigotry and racism, it can also expose them to groups that are often misrepresented, such as furry communities or queer people. It is a double-edged sword. Also, how authorities or companies would enforce a ban is questionable. I do not trust giving companies or the government my facial data. Although the current government is not extreme, one election could bring an authoritarian candidate to power who would then have access to controlling social media and to people's identification and online information. Story 14. I do not like how this ban is enforced in theory or the real motives behind it, such as surveillance. Principally, I think Reddit is just as bad as the rest. I also think not having 15-year-olds on social media is a good idea. Story 15. My thought is that virtual private network usage in Australia is about to skyrocket. Story 16. 2 things. 1. Children will be protected from creepy direct messages. Reddit allows more leeway for lewd and harmful direct messages because of its anonymity. 2. Children may try to circumvent this by creating a Gmail account that claims to be older than 16 and then logging into Reddit. Story 17. I don't know. Being off the internet when I was 14 probably would have helped a lot with my mental health. Story 18. Seems a bit silly. How the hell are they going to learn that the world is full of arseholes, and a lot of them inhabit Reddit? Story 19. If our parents had wielded this power when we were children, they would have banned television, video games, and more. Story 20. Social media can be harmful, but it also provides valuable resources that would be a devastating loss to countless teenagers. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender teenagers living in abusive religious households, for example, could lose access to support groups they might not otherwise be able to access. I was 13 when I started using this site and was exposed to healthier worldviews through it. It is sad to think other kids in similar situations would not have the same opportunity. Story 21. It is probably good for the kids. I would support similar laws where I live. Story 22. How are they going to enforce it? Many websites are restricted to users 16 years and older, 18 years and older, or 21 years and older, but you can still access them by simply claiming you are of age. Unless users upload identification to verify their age, there is no way to enforce it apart from blocking accounts already registered as under 16. Even then, users can create new accounts and enter whatever age they want. Story 23. I think this is stupid. I will leave Reddit if I have to prove my age by providing identification, or I will use a free virtual private network until it becomes global policy. I can understand wanting age verification on social platforms where most users share their personal lives, but that is not Reddit. I feel this concept is being driven by the platforms themselves for better ad targeting. If parents care that much, they need to take responsibility. Story 24. Sorry, I can't access or reproduce the full text from that link. I can, however, do one of the following. Provide a concise summary of the article. Extract key points or a brief outline suitable for text-to-speech. Edit and clean the article for Azure text-to-speech, spelling, punctuation, expand acronyms, remove links/special characters. If you paste the text here, up to 10,000 characters. Which would you prefer? Story 25. Sure. Good luck enforcing it without parental buy-in. Story 26. That won't stop anybody. I made this account when I was 11. Story 27. On paper, the ban is a good idea. The issue is that it is impossible to enforce without completely eliminating people's privacy. Story 28. I'm not Australian, but I feel there are good intentions behind it, although it will be a pain across the board. On the one hand, that is good. There is a cataclysmic amount of harmful content that no child has to be exposed to. On the other hand, I can see it causing problems. When questions need to be answered, and Google is useless for that. As someone in the gaming community, there is a lot of content in games that requires consulting the internet for help, and 99% of the time there are a dozen Reddit posts of people having the same issue. Story 29. I think it is a concept that requires a certain degree of nuance that has not yet reached the general public. Children also have a degree of agency that should be considered and respected. Anything beyond that depends on the specific circumstances. Story 30. The government policy is that the application must take reasonable measures to prevent users under 16 from having an account. While you can browse Reddit without an account, you can follow or, I believe, post. They aim to control this and direct communication. I saw a write-up the other day stating it is not a ban but a delay in allowed access. Similarly, adult content is not banned, just restricted. Story 31. I think it is short-sighted. It is a lack of understanding to assume that removing something eliminates its existence. It creates a vacuum into which a new problem can emerge. In this case, access to Reddit is being restricted but not to sites like 4chan, mostly for practical reasons. I cannot think of a perfect solution, but using an allow list strategy seems the most effective way to achieve the policy's aims. Story 32. I honestly think it is good. I lived through the rise of social media. This is for the best. Story 33. I am fully in favor of restrictions, depending on implementation. Social media should have stricter age restrictions and be treated like other forms of media. It functions partly as a communication service, partly as media, and partly as an addictive substance. It is quite dangerous if not handled properly, even for adults. Story 34. Reddit is particularly dangerous because its downvote system turns the entire platform into an echo chamber where dissenting ideas are hidden. Story 35. I have slightly mixed feelings because I grew up online. I am 30 now, and I still think there are many great things about the internet. But I think it is ultimately good to ban children from being online because online communities seem to create the worst belief systems when people are together. Think about things like the red pill and incel movements, for example. Those terms were not around when I was a teen, but the behavior existed back then. It gets worse because anyone who does not grow out of that mindset can end up influencing the real world negatively, shaping an entire new generation while making extreme and frightening views seem normal. Children should not be online unsupervised because they do not understand how the real world works or how extreme behavior contributes to harm beyond themselves. Story 36. If I had children, I would trust them. I would not trust the internet with them, though. I am 36, and I had conversations and encounters in my adolescence on various message boards and in massively multiplayer online games that were not at all appropriate. It is worse now. Even grown adults cannot really handle this. Story 37. Excluding the website 4chan from the social media ban will cause the policy to backfire spectacularly. Story 38. In my view, the government has more important things to do than parent other people's children. The government should ensure tools and information are widely available and nothing more. Let parents do the parenting. Blanket bans on things because some people refuse to learn how the internet works are unacceptable. Story 39. Social media is not for children. It has been proven to be harmful. There are many negatives and no positives. Story 40. Probably a good idea. Some communities on Reddit are not appropriate for 16-year-olds. All social media should be age-restricted. Platforms with algorithmically curated feeds should require users to opt in to personalization and provide an alternative chronological feed that is not personally curated. Story 41. There are so many inappropriate niche subreddits a kid could stumble into. I think age-locking it is a good decision. Story 42. I think a lot of people are forgetting what it was like to be 16. Some people say social media should be banned for anyone under 16. I would bet many of those people clicked the I am 18 button on those sites despite not being 18 and later became hypocritical. MySpace launched in 2003, and at the time it was almost exclusively used by teenagers. The same was true of Facebook until it was taken over by ants reposting minion memes, fathers with profile pictures showing only their foreheads, and mothers posting inspirational quotes over sunset backgrounds. We grew up with it, but many of those same people want to take it away from others instead of parenting their children. I would argue it is more dangerous for adults. Adults vote and are exposed to misinformation. Adults hold credit card information and fall for obvious scams. Adults also post illicit pictures of themselves that they hope potential employers will never see. Story 43. Is everyone in Australia now required to verify their legal identity to use Reddit? 1984, here we come. Story 44. I do not think anyone under 16 should use social media at all. Story 45. Good. Children with developing minds do not need to be in echo chambers like Reddit. That is a one-way path to radicalization. Story 46. It is bullshit. Every time authorities ban something to protect the children, it is not about protecting children. It is about preventing adults from advocating for change. The Australian government has been aligning with Israeli talking points, which are often debunked on Reddit. The TikTok ban in the United States was primarily about policing adults who discussed the Palestinian genocide. Story 47. I wish I had never joined social media so early. Story 48. All social media platforms should be banned for people under 16, or possibly for everyone. Story 49. It's usually toxic adults who ruin the experience. This might save kids who are still figuring out who they want to be from mental and emotional abuse at the hands of a bald, fat, greasy basement dweller with main character syndrome. Story 50. Australia has never had freedom of speech and is ensuring it never will. Restricted access goes along with that. Story 51. It sounds great on paper, but how do you enforce it without further eroding online privacy? Story 52. I had to have a college email address to sign up for Facebook. It really started going downhill after they removed that requirement. Story 53. I think we should ban low-effort posts that ask what are your thoughts on in this subreddit. Story 54. I am all for banning social media for people under 16, but I am completely opposed to these companies collecting identification, and I will absolutely refuse to comply. There must be a mechanism using cryptography or secure key exchange that allows me to attest my age without providing scans of my face or identification documents. You should be concerned about this as well. Discord recently leaked a large number of identification documents from their support system. Australian companies such as the airline Qantas and the telecommunications company Optus have already exposed identification documents in data breaches. Data security must be at the core of any legislation. Companies do not have the infrastructure or the care to secure our data adequately, so they should not have it. Story 55. A couple of years ago, my now 13-year-old created accounts for anything she could. She entered an age that allowed account creation. There is really nothing stopping children from doing this. Story 56. The country that wanted to ban pornography featuring small breasts, ladies and gentlemen. Story 57. Judging by the number of jerks in our teenagers community on Reddit, I would say it is a good thing. However, how might you enforce it? Story 58. Content warning. Contains discriminatory language. I wish it happened here. Kids ruin the internet and should be quarantined to their own version of it. Story 59. How has everyone become so sensitive? Story 60. This is probably for the best. I am in favor of broader bans on social media because it is toxic. Story 61. Reddit has been added to the list of sites barred to people under 16 from December as the Albanese government seeks to stop children seeing harmful content. Story 62. I had a conversation earlier about the purpose of the internet and the government's attempt to police it. The internet is meant to be a constant, never-ending space where everything is shared and meshed together. As a child who grew up in the 1990s watching technology advance from dial-up to what we have now, I was online at a young age viewing or interacting with things I should not have been exposed to. I like to think I was raised well enough to understand right and wrong. These days, there is an expectation that schools teach children topics that, frankly, should come from their families because of the sensitive nature of the subjects and the shame, embarrassment, or curiosity an individual may feel, rather than merely an overview presented in the classroom. I went to a Catholic school, and I often joke that I had my first school sex education lesson after I had already lost my virginity. One line I always remember was, "Do not be surprised if you wake up and find hair in places it had not been before." And I was already sporting what I thought at the time was a beard. Kids are clever and very curious. They will find workarounds because they are growing up with technology and understand it better than those attempting to police it. Banning it for under 16s only draws more attention to it. If you tell kids not to do something, they will often rebel and do it to spite you. Story 63. Reddit should be banned worldwide so a less shit website can take its place. Story 64. Too many search results lead back to Reddit for answers. Even a child searching something innocuous about sports often ends up on Reddit. I worry about what secondary sites they might visit if Reddit is banned. Reddit is at least an evil we know, right? Story 65. Also included are Kik, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube and X, formerly Twitter, Discord, Roblox, Steam, YouTube Kids, Lego Play and WhatsApp have been informed by Australian authorities that they are not subject to age restrictions. Story 66. There are about to be way more under 16s from Australia on Reddit. That's my thought. Story 67. It should be banned for people over 16 everywhere, not just in Australia. Story 68. Many sites have age restrictions, and the only way to pass the check is to say you are over 18. I have not had this problem because I am in my 30s, but if I were a child now and wanted to access a site and all I had to do was lie, that would be troubling. Story 69. How would you enforce that? Requiring identification checks would be hard to gain support. Even if implemented, people could use a virtual private network. You cannot ban virtual private networks because they are used commercially. The idea may be sound, but how would you enforce it in practice? Story 70. I think such a law would attract even more people under 16 to Reddit. Forums on marriage, relationships, politics, economics, and virology would see many more people posing as experts chiming in. Story 71. How would they do it for Reddit? I wouldn't trust them with documents, so I guess this is a way to shift parental control responsibility back to the parents. Story 72. Everything should be banned for people under 16 years old. Back to the salt mines with them. Story 73. I am not in Australia and I am not under 16 years of age. I have no horse in this race. Story 74. If you are not smart enough to get around it, then you do not need to use it. Story 75. Welcome to the new right-wing ultra-conservative world order. The bans and restrictions start out as efforts to protect children, and everyone gets on board because it is framed that way. But it expands, making it easier to impose further limits in the name of protecting us, national security, or the greater good, or simply because the person in charge is angry, had their feelings hurt, or wants to flex power and assert dominance and control. Not long ago, I would have dismissed a post like this as a conspiracy theory, but not anymore. Story 76. If anything, it should be 18. In fact, most of the internet should be 18. Story 77. I am genuinely not sure how they will enforce it. Given how frequently our personal information is hacked and held for ransom by various Australian companies, with seemingly zero repercussions for the companies we trusted with our information, I am reluctant to give away more personal information just to prove that I am over 16. You should change your password. Yeah, thanks, dipshits. You should change your head of security operations. Story 78. I think reducing children's screen time, including social media, is a good idea for many reasons. Socialization, exercise, attention span, exposure to toxic worldviews, and abuse. I also understand that legislators struggle to find solutions when parents are inattentive or indifferent. I do not see an easy solution, but I believe legislators are right to try. Story 79. Reddit can be both harmful and beneficial for younger people, so I have mixed feelings. I am also concerned about privacy, security, and the likelihood of data breaches. Children will find a way around restrictions regardless. The best we can do is try to teach them and hope they learn early enough. Story 80. Right before this blew up, our Prime Minister promised his big issue would be reining in gambling ads. He dropped that incredibly fast at the command of his gambling sponsors. This distracts from who makes the orders. Story 81. Families have to figure out coming-of-age solutions based on age and education progression. It is different in every society. Also, I am shadow banned because of this question. How can we change the message you broke Reddit? It is a corporate cop-out. It shames the user when the server is the problem. Story 82. I understand why people are upset, but protesting something like this is not a hill I would die on. Adult content appears here that is clearly too mature for children. Where the line is drawn for who counts as a child will always be somewhat arbitrary, but the age in question seems reasonable. Story 83. Just wait until the industry codes come online. Those are going to be really fun, also known as age assurance for any media or app that could contain adult or mature content. All devices and systems must be designed to provide age assurance and parental controls. Story 84. I absolutely support this. Reddit stifles critical thinking by hiding minority opinions in a subreddit. It is very unhealthy and a sleazy form of censorship that should not influence anyone, especially children. Story 85. Prohibition has never worked. Smoking, alcohol, and drugs are either banned or age-restricted, yet people can still access them. The same will happen with a social media ban. People who are age-restricted will use a virtual private network. This is the government trying to put the genie back in the bottle. Education about social media use is more important. Story 86. Unfortunately, the cat is out of the bag. Cyberbullying really kicked off during the Microsoft Network days and moved over to MySpace and then Facebook as soon as they launched. Predators have been around for a long time on blogs, internet relay chat, and many other forms of public communication. Even then, people knew the internet is dangerous, which is why there were so many programs dedicated to educating parents about how to use and monitor it for their children's safety. It is why software such as Net Nanny existed. Honestly, nothing anyone does now can turn back time. None of it will work. Children now grow up with the internet, social media, and technology by default. It is inescapable. Even then, children knew how to bypass blocks and restrictions, and now it is even easier. I admire the attempt, and it is important to look after children, but all I can say is good fucking luck. It will not work. Story 87. Well, technically it is under 91 since everything is upside down. Story 88. Reddit could create a subset of subreddits that are safe for children and have them moderated by an administrator team, but I do not know. As I get older, I believe the conversation should focus on casual access to pornography for children. If a child wants to see pornography, they will, and there is no way to stop them without unnecessarily stripping rights from adults. However, children should not be exposed to suggestive content every few swipes, which is easy on Reddit and comes before young users set up filters and dedicated subreddits full of pornography. Story 89. If nothing else, it would likely improve the quality of relationship advice and political analysis and commentary, both of which, on average, appear to be at the level of a 15-year-old. Story 90. It almost seems that this has happened in the United States on the subreddits I frequent. The quality of dialogue seems to have increased. Or maybe you are all finally bots. Story 91. It makes sense to protect children, but banning Reddit for people under 16 feels like overkill. It will just push teenagers to sketchier sites and will be difficult to enforce. Story 92. There are subreddits that are specifically for teens. The ones I have seen are for asking advice. Story 93. It is not going to work. Restrictions only make creative children find a way around them. Story 94. Kids are smart, though. They would just lie about their ages or find a way around the loophole. Story 95. I feel that parents should have done this, but now the internet has to. Reddit is not for children, just like other social media. Story 96. Keeping kids off a platform with untethered access to degenerate communities, toxic subcultures, subs that regularly post-score, extreme antisocial ideologies, lightly moderated amateur and homemade porn, and conspiracy mills that warp behavior in adults does not sound that bad to me. Dictating when or how adults access those platforms would be a problem. Story 97. Another salvo in the creeping totalitarianism taking over nearly all democracies worldwide. It is relatively minor compared to what the United States and the United Kingdom are doing, but still significant. Story 98. First question. How will this be enforced? Will they require users to upload identification documents? Many people do not have a driver's license or a passport. State-issued alternative photo identification cards are often not recognized by federal agencies. Facial recognition has been suggested, but it has even more issues, such as getting ages wrong or misidentifying Black people. Second question. Has the government not heard of virtual private networks? Story 99. My view is that all social media should be completely transparent. The authors of every post should be identified in the post taglines, and there should be full disclosure of editorial policies, including the identities of the people who operate them. The only way to deal with lies and hate-mongering is to shine bright daylight on those who commit these offenses. Story 100. I understand the intention, but prohibition does not educate. If we do not teach them how to use social media, we are just pushing them to do it in secret. Story 101. I do not know whether it is good or bad that many more Australians will be visiting 4chan. Story 102. Whenever a politician does something for the children like this, it is really about tracking adults. Story 103. I guess we will see many more under-16s on Reddit. Seriously, you tell Australians not to do something and they will do it just to be contrary. I do not think many kids today even know what Reddit is and will only look it up because someone tells them they are not allowed. Story 104. It is obvious that Reddit is not banned at my workplace only because the information technology staff browse it all day. Story 105. It is for the best. If they are mature enough to use a virtual private network before age 16, then their choice is reasonable. If they are not, Reddit is probably a bad place for them. Story 106. Good for the most part. Doom scrolling is the worst type of procrastination. On the other hand, Reddit is great for finding answers. Story 107. It's not just Reddit. It's all social media and possibly YouTube. That is still up in the air. Story 108. It will not stop anything. Children lie about their age to create accounts all the time. It is performative at best. Story 109. Remember, kids. The protests in Nepal were a consequence of the government banning social media. Story 110. The faster social media meets these restrictions, the faster it will likely die off, and all the people addicted to it, myself included, will be much better off. Story 111. It is just another poorly considered piece of legislation with no actual critical thought behind it. Teenagers will go to places that do not care about the laws, and that is arguably worse. Story 112. Creating accounts is being banned. Unlike many other social media, the platform will remain accessible for viewing. Story 113. This will work just as well as the "Are you over 18" button used to view pornography. Story 114. I am Australian and have a few slightly conflicting thoughts about this. Social media and the potential to always be filmed is a cause for concern for young people. Always being connected can bring problems, such as a young person who is being bullied not being able to escape from their peers even when away from school. However, like many plans and pieces of legislation of this nature, it is not well considered and is unlikely to be well implemented. Children can and will circumvent it using a virtual private network or other methods. Those who are being bullied may experience disruptions to their contact with support networks, isolating them further. I recognize this somewhat conflicts with my earlier point, but there is no one-size-fits-all approach to these kinds of limitations. A better option would be a more measured approach. More education about what we share, and more parental involvement and supervision of children on social media. Unfortunately, education and support take longer than a blanket ban, so people often opt for quick fixes. Story 115. Getting children off social media is almost certainly a good thing, but executing this on a national level is problematic. There is too much room for abuse in how it is carried out, especially if it involves uploading personal identification. Additionally, nothing is safe. From data leakage, even systems that delete your data after it has been processed are vulnerable. The proper approach is to ensure that parents understand the risks of social media and educate their children rather than implementing needlessly dangerous surveillance state systems. Story 116. I understand a social media ban for children under 16, but the proposed implementation makes no sense. The most effective approach would be to produce a smartphone for children under 16. The device could be restricted in content and settings to make it safe. If you see a child using a device that is not safe, report it. If you see an adult using a child's phone, report it. Identification would be required to purchase a child's phone, and that should be the legal guardian's identification. Everyone else could use regular devices. Simple and effective. Story 117. Legislation should not replace good parenting. Story 118. I would support a ban on all social media for everyone. Story 119. So who is going to explain to the adults how to use memes now? Story 120. I think it is a good decision, and it should be implemented all over the world. Story 121. I think it is a good thing because the internet can be dangerous for minors. The more we can do to protect them from cyberbullying, predators, and so on, the better. Story 122. Albo did not actually ban it for child safety. They only applied the ban to pornography sites after significant backlash. It is just a tool of control marketed as the slogan "Think about the children." Anybody who thinks this law is for the best should be evaluated. Story 123. A good idea on paper, but impossible to enforce in practice. Story 124. Good. The rest of the world should follow. While there are plenty of age-appropriate and safe-for-work subreddits that are wholesome, inspiring, helpful, useful, humorous, or simply fine to pass the time with, there are equally many subreddits that are extreme, damaging, brutal, violent, or sexual. That does not include all the misinformation, propaganda, or content promoting illicit substances or violence. Adults can filter and make nuanced, informed decisions, but children under 16 do not need that exposure. Even though writing this makes me feel like a whiny Karen, I still stand behind it. I support better restrictions. Story 125. I think we should ban highly addictive algorithms and greatly improve online education for children. Teach them to recognize the signs of predatory behavior and similar risks. A total ban will never work. They also suggested banning WhatsApp as a social media platform, which is, the most foolish idea since the war on emus. Story 126. Fuck that one motherfucker who told me I was making this up a few months ago. I hope he sees it, laughing out loud. Story 127. My initial thought was, damn, how am I going to kill time now? This is weird considering I am 26 and from the United Kingdom. Story 128. They should allow people to subscribe to subreddits and read them, but ban the endless algorithmic scroll feed. Story 129. I think banning Reddit for users under 16 is a step in the right direction, but we need to consider the broader implications. If we are serious about protecting children online, we should pursue comprehensive legislation that addresses all social media platforms, not just Reddit. The real challenge is enforcing age restrictions without compromising user privacy or driving children to riskier online behavior. Story 130. They will find a way around it quickly, but it will be a nice few hours without the squeakers trolling. Story 131. A progressive series of Australian governments have barely demonstrated the technical ability God granted a carrion fly. This will be nothing but a huge inconvenience for everybody and will be completely ineffective, likely widely bypassed within the first 48 hours. Clearly Albo did not learn from the Great Firewall of Conroy debacle. Also, the online critic can go away. You Central Intelligence Agency stooge. Story 132. I genuinely wish this were all of Reddit. I don't care how many people would leave. What remained would be a far better platform, even with the bots. Story 133. Is this not practically unenforceable? I believe the age verification mandate was removed from the bill, so there is no real way to enforce the law. Unless this is something different, I do not know, but I think this is a nothing burger. Story 134. I wouldn't disagree as long as TikTok, Snapchat, and Twitter are included. Story 135. You are all so hopeful. I don't trust Reddit to take care of my actual identification, and I would just leave if it asked for it. Story 136. Frankly, children should not be able to access the internet in the first place, and they will do so regardless of regulations or other obstacles. I do not see how this will matter. Story 137. Users should be under 25. People aged 25 and older should pass a basic math and grammar test before posting. This should not be limited to Australia. Story 138. No 16-year-old should be allowed on any form of social media, especially when community standards and rules are broken with no consequences. Social media is littered with hate, misinformation, bullying, filters, and false advertising. It is no place for young people. Story 139. The sad thing is that many kids find places like Reddit useful for complex questions they cannot ask their parents or friends. Worse yet, a few smarter kids will go to 4chan or other darker corners of the internet that do not ask their age. Story 140. I have a theory that banning virtual private networks is the actual endgame for all these online security measures. It has already been a disaster. Data was leaked from the age verification process. I am not sure what they plan to do to enforce this. If it involves identification checks, a large amount of children's sensitive data could be exposed. I do not really care about my own data at this point. It has been breached so many times, but putting children in danger under the guise of protecting them is wrong. Story 141. It's definitely a good idea, but I think video games should be banned for anyone under 18. Hopefully, the social media ban will help slow down these teen trends in Australia and help people be unique instead of all looking the same with a low taper fade. This should also help reduce crime rates. Story 142. If they made it 14, fewer kids would learn how to get around it. 16 is too old. You become even more susceptible to scams. Story 143. I genuinely think that would be nice across the globe. There would be less brain rot on Reddit. Story 144. I'm reading some of these responses thinking, do other parents not consider parental controls or parental control apps that can monitor their children's activity? Children can be in their rooms, doors open or closed, and even in the toilet or bathroom with their devices, and parents can see everything they do. Parental controls seem to be overlooked. Now I and many others will have to suffer because the government wants to play parent. When these platforms are hacked, it is not a matter of if but when. Discord was already hacked. Your data, including identification and other personal information, will be stolen. It exposes all of Australia to identity theft. Don't suggest a virtual private network. I and everyone else should not have to digitally change countries just because the government wants control. We live in a democracy, so where is the people's vote on this? When did we give up our autonomy and our right to anonymity and privacy? Speaking of privacy, this contradicts the government's statements on the human right to privacy. It's wrong. It's another attempt to oppress people and an abuse of power. Parents need to look after their children digitally and physically. It is their responsibility, not the government's. Story 145. This is from someone who was bullied and groomed online. It is a good idea to prevent under 16-year-olds from using social media. If social media had been banned when I was younger, I would not have been able to send nude images to women and men from as young as 12. I was manipulated. I lived in a toxic home where I was made to feel ugly. They are trying to keep children safe because of the harmful content and risks online. Bullying is common. Some people respond by insulting the bully, then blocking or ignoring them, but it is also important to socialize in real life. Story 146. My connection is set to Epstein Island. Now they won't ask. Story 147. I think it's good. The internet and social media should not be available to children. Story 148. This will either be unenforceable or authoritarian nonsense. Given that all of us were at some point children, I think it is clear that this sort of thing would be pointless. Story 149. They will use a virtual private network. These bans never work. I wish parents would do their job and stop begging the government to do it for them. Story 150. It should be the parents' discretion. Many 16-year-olds are married and have children, and pregnancies are sometimes unintentional. I do not want government interference with communication on the internet, for what it is worth. Story 151. It will improve Reddit a lot. I do not support the government taking control of the internet, which is what this is really all about, but it would definitely improve the site to remove the dumb kids. Story 152. I think any site that offers not safe for work content or that allows direct or indirect links to adult sites, such as Instagram, TikTok, and similar platforms, should be banned for anyone under 18. Story 153. As someone in Australia who is under 16 and uses Reddit, I'm all for it. I know this sounds hypocritical, but social media as a whole has been so detrimental to people around me that I'd happily give it up if it meant everyone else would too. The problem is the way it's enforced, but the approach given is probably the best they can feasibly implement. It's really hard to make measures like this work. Story 154. I've recently read Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, and he suggests this as one of 4 steps we as a society can take to counteract the effects of technology on children's mental health. I like the idea, but I understand that execution as it stands right now will be difficult. I will be curious to see how it is enforced. Story 155. The Australian government is being authoritarian again. Color me surprised. Story 156. I have used Reddit and think it is great. However, there is nothing positive about the platform for children under 16. Story 157. I am all for it. It is bad enough that many adults like to argue over petty nonsense on Reddit. We do not need to bring children into the mix and have them take part or be on the receiving end. Story 158. Well, that's 50% of Reddit traffic gone and a 200% increase in post quality. All the sex-related posts on AskReddit are eliminated. Story 159. There is nothing more embarrassing than a fully grown adult realizing they are in a Reddit argument with someone under 16. So for the sake of our dignity, I say go for it. Edit. Many people are up past their bedtime downvoting this comment. Story 160. Great idea. The next step is to eliminate anonymity. You can only post using your real name linked to a valid credit card. That reduces a lot of the hate in public forums. In my humble opinion. Story 161. For goodness sake, we already told them they are not running an open-air prison anymore. Do we need to send the memo again? Story 162. I would say it is a sad day for the teenager subreddit, but it is mostly middle-aged men anyway. Story 163. I would support a ban for people under 16, but I would be concerned about methods of verifying age that are ineffective or that compromise my data or identity. Story 164. I am in favor of measures to encourage children to get off social media, But I also know these measures will be impossible to enforce. The more a nation restricts youth access to websites, the more its information security industry will grow over the next 10 years. Story 165. I like the policy, but children will easily work around it. Story 166. Social media should be strictly monitored. I do not think it should be eliminated altogether. Children should be able to access certain websites. Story 167. To be honest, in addition to the common view that children should not use social media, many Reddit posts by children aged 12 to 15 are vague, immature, oblivious, boring, or simply naive. Story 168. I am not sure how it will be enforced without privacy problems, but it would be nice. I want American teenagers off Reddit more than Australians, but fewer teenagers is good either way. Story 169. Limited social media access for youngsters is a good idea. As much as I praise the internet for connecting me with some of the best people I know, the risks enormously outweigh the benefits, especially now. Teachers, therapists, and even the police have been urging parents to monitor their kids' online activity for years, but many have not. It is time to clamp down. I am curious how such rules or laws would be enforced, though not enough to worry. I am also curious what young people today would do instead. I expect video games. My little cousin is not allowed on the internet without strict supervision, and my aunt lets him play Fortnite with his school friends without any issue. Story 170. Good. Let's be real. There are a lot of pedophiles on Reddit. Story 171. I am fine with it. I am older and I like talking with other people who have some context about the world they live in. It is strange to have conversations with people who remember Obama the way I remember Jimmy Carter. Story 172. I like the idea. There is strong evidence that social media is harmful for many people, and even more so for younger people. However, the danger often lies in how these platforms are implemented. A recent example is Discord's hack. Story 173. That is impossible to enforce. It is probably best to avoid Reddit, but there are many worse places where they could spend their time online. Story 174. Sounds great. Let us make it global and maybe increase the age to 25. Story 175. I completely understand. I do not want to see certain things, yet advertisements for OnlyFans and for sites like Second Love that promote cheating and other adult content constantly pop up. When computers were new, you had to look things up and search results could be misleading. Now that content is forced on you everywhere. I was offline for years, and I have to admit it was very relaxing. Almost everything on the internet and social media has become toxic and full of lies and false information. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.